How you doing, everybody? Damian Zamora, CEO of Go Mobile Solutions, coming to you on this Happy Hour Hangout, coming to you from Cabo San Lucas once again. And today, we're bringing you back a guest. I know it's been a couple of weeks. We've been off. I've had some traveling. The team's been doing some stuff, working on this big launch we're working on and things going on. So thank you for your patience, but no more ado, we are here, and today we are going to dive deep. What you're going to learn on this session today is the importance of branding. Now, we've had other guests in the past that have covered branding, but what you're going to see today is going to be very different. You are going to learn some ways on how you can separate yourself apart from the pack, because in a marketing world that is as noisy as it is today, and it's only going to get noisier, you absolutely have to be the cream that rises to the top. And my guest is going to share with you, because my guest, the CEO of Cyberdogz branding firm, he's also an agency. He is your peer. And you're going to hear the success and the failures probably, and the success and failures. And, hey, that entrepreneur journey that we have, you're going to get an inside look at how he's run his agency, who he serves, how he serves them, and you'll probably come away with some really good ideas today that you can implement in your agency. And we're also joined by Kevin Davis. Many of you know Kevin Davis, and he's on here. He's been doing some generative AI training for the community. There he is, said hi. And he's Mike's partner, and so he's on here as well. So Mike, with no further ado, say hi to your community. This is your community. And just so everybody knows, he's also a white label reseller. Mike, say hi to everybody.
How's it going?
Good to have you on, man. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm getting excited about it. I want to let you know we can do this with slides, without slides. It's entirely up to you. It's an informal environment here.
I just kind of freestyle it, but I also do have a slide deck that I can share, because there's some visuals there that I think will help kind of support the conversation.
Okay, excellent. Well, let's go ahead and give him controls, Derek. And everybody, just so you know how we like to do this, we'd love for you to engage. So go ahead and pop some information here in the chat, some questions, some comments, some celebrations. Tell us where you're coming in from. Just kick up that engagement, because we love it. And we're going to be answering any questions that you have with regards to branding today. So if you brought some questions on how to tighten up your brand, or how you can make some changes to your brand or your clients, make sure to bring them today, pop them in the chat. When the time's right, we'll go ahead and also allow you to come on audio and interact with us.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And kind of as Damian said, just jump in with questions. I can take them as we go. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own journey and kind of how we got here, and some of the revelations that I've had in my career, and kind of how we've applied them, not only through Cyberdogz, but just with our clients, and kind of how we've been able to make some impacts there. So my background is I'm a creative. So I was an art kid. I did a lot of drawing, cartooning, those kinds of things. And as I went through my career, I learned things about not only the marketing industry, but just kind of working with different companies, different brands. And over the course of a 20+ year career, there's just some things that I picked up on, or some things that I noticed. And when you're working a 9-to-5 or a job where you punch the clock, you just kind of adapt, and you just kind of walk through those pieces. But there was a part of me that always thought there might be a better way, or a simpler way, or maybe a way that we could make a bigger impact with clients if only we looked at it through the right lens, which kind of brought me to the next stage in my career, which was Cyberdogz. So when I left the corporate world, I set out to create, I didn't know exactly what I was wanting to create, but I knew I wanted to create some kind of a creative agency, something that, something I could have fun with and kind of do what I like to do, but at the same time, take all these experiences and these different things that I'd learned over the course of, the 20+ years, and not do it like everybody else. Because when you look at kind of the agency model, I'm not saying there's not room for more, but there's a lot of them. So like my idea was, well, how do I be different? How do I take those experiences and do something with it, so that maybe that road's a little smoother for me, or I can create a niche for myself in an area of opportunity where I can make a bigger impact than maybe my competitors. So taking all these experiences, there's one common theme and one thing that I learned having worked with brands like Nike, Patagonia, Jordan, Milwaukee. Does anybody want to take a wild guess as to what all these brands have in common? Anyone? The big thing that they have in common is they all put their brand pants on one leg at a time. And what I mean by that is whether you're Nike or Patagonia, whoever you are, it doesn't matter how big you are, you're still trying to reach more customers. You're still trying to reach the right customers. You're still trying to grow your business. You're still trying to create a strategy that's different than the one you had last time because you did some work on it, some evaluations on it. You figured out what worked, what didn't. And kind of what I learned in that process is not only do these brands all have the same things in common as Joe's Plumbing, for example, but the process is relatively the same. The resources might be different. The budgets might be bigger or smaller, or whatever it is, but the strategic approach to it was very similar. So kind of what I wanted to do with that is, okay, how do I simplify that and just make that applicable to everybody that I work with? And I really learned that the hard way in kind of brand worship in a way, which is it's a curse and a blessing. Like I love brands, I follow brands. And when I got the opportunity to work with Nike, I was a kid in a candy store. I love that brand, right? But it humanized the process for me to find out that they also have flaws and they make mistakes and they have people in the room that are asking kind of the same dumb questions that we all ask each other from time to time. And I'm like, but you're Nike. Like, you shouldn't be asking questions like this. You should just have the answers. So taking that lesson and learning that from having worked with some of these brands, we created an approach with Cyberdogz that's very simple. It's very transparent. And it all starts with kind of asking those tough questions and asking not only to the clients, but asking them of ourselves. So being able to build those relationships around a very transparent set of questions and kind of challenges kind of helps us get the brand off on the right foot, which then leads to your mobile apps, your websites, your paid ads, all the different things that we want to do as an agency. So the big question is helping clients understand what branding is. And, you know, the thing about branding is a lot of people think it starts with a logo. They think it's just, well, I got a logo, I got a brand, I'm good, I'm done. And yes, a logo is part of the equation. It's part of the bigger ecosystem of what a brand is, but it's a very small part, you know. And what we try to teach our clients and kind of teach, I'm kind of a brand geek, so I'd talk to a bum on the street if you would, but it's really, branding is a feeling. Branding is an experience. Branding is it's a process of belief. And branding can be very obvious in some cases where like you're wearing a logo, but it can be also very subliminal in some places where maybe you walk into a store at the mall and they're pumping in a scent of fresh almonds as part of their experience. So all these different things, from a smell to a look to a feel to a walking into an Apple store and how everything is bright white, it's crisp, it's packaged tightly, all of those subliminal cues are playing into that brand machine and kind of getting you to either fall in love with or not fall in love with their brand. I tell the story often when we meet clients who kind of disregard the process. They'll say, I'm not really into the brand thing, it doesn't really matter. I laugh sometimes because those guys are typically head to toe Under Armour. Or I'll ask them, well, what kind of car do you drive? And they'll say, oh, I drive a Range Rover or whatever it is. And it's like, you are as much a victim of branding as anybody else is. You're just really not admitting it, or you're not aware of the fact that you're falling into the same traps as everybody else. So the question is, as a company, you know, how do I make people fall in love with my brand? How do I make my brand cool? How do I follow that road so that I can have advantages like Nike, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, whatever it is? You know, I don't even know if I have this in here, but one of the things I always tell my clients when they need to hear it is that you don't have to spend $1 million to look like $1 million brand. Okay, so yeah, so basically kind of helping clients understand kind of what branding is, and at least if nothing else, I know branding can be a very abstract topic, helping them at least somewhat visually see it differently than maybe they did before. So that's kind of step one, and knowing that it's going to be a process. So I don't exactly expect clients to just, pick it up like that. But at the same time, if they start to adopt the mindset and actually think through some of these things, they will eventually get there. So if you want to go to the next slide. So where do I start and what are the steps? And this is where I kind of help the clients and just kind of help brands understand that it's a process. There's hurdles, and sometimes these can even be excuses. So next slide. Step one is changing the mindset. Again, understanding that it's not just the logo, it's not just, maybe the billboard or the sign on your window or getting a vehicle wrap or something like that, but understanding that it goes much bigger than that. And it really starts with defining the goals and kind of the different pieces that you want to be present, but not only present, but prevalent in the brand story. So everybody has a couple, 2 or 3 things that matter to them, or they think those are the major differentiators. And where I kind of split that conversation is I try to steer people away from, I'm not saying core values are bad, but most people come to the core value conversation talking about honesty, integrity, like all these things that they should be present in your business regardless. What I'm talking about is the stuff that really sets you apart. Like, we are really focused on delivering the best result in this area, or we're really good at analytics, or, what are the 1 or 2 things that you really shine on? Because those are the things that layer on top of the core values, that layer on top of all the other things you possibly do well. What are those things? Because those things can become the benchmarks in your brand, and they can become what you become known for, which is important. So if you want to go to the next slide, Damien. So the brand, it needs to be based off the feasibility, and, basically, can you deliver on it? Are you equipped to do it? What I see a lot of times with companies and entrepreneurs is, like I said, they go to that kind of that entrepreneurial 101 bag of tricks, and they grab those core values, or they grab a set of services that are kind of commonplace in the industry. And that's fine if those are your true differentiators, but what are the 2 or 3 things that live on top of that, like I said, and can you deliver on them? So like when a client or a business says, we're going to be the best in the industry at XYZ. I get that. That could be a BHAG, that could be one of your goals, but truly asking yourself, are we the best at that right now though? And if we're not, how are we going to become the best? But if we're not the best at that, what are we best at? Because you might be better off going down that road or chasing something that you're going to succeed at, and then letting those other things develop with your brand along the way. If you want to advance again, Damien. And this is the part most people get sucked into. It's creating the identity. So, making sure that, A, I know who I am, B, I know what I'm really good at and where we're going to steer this brand so that we can differentiate. But now I got to create a visual or something that goes with it so that I stand out amongst the crowd. Again, when most businesses look at their brand, or they look at starting a business, they just look at their competition. They look at the other people in their industry, and inherently we have kind of a monkey see, monkey do attitude about it. And we want to build a logo that, like, if I'm going to enter into the financial space or the banking industry, I go looking at financial logos and I just want to look like them. And my question or my challenge to most clients is, well, do you want to stand out or you want to blend in? And the client will say, well, I want to stand out. Well, then stop looking at what everybody else is doing and let's build something that actually represents and reflects the different things that we're working on as to who you are as a brand and what you're trying to do that's different in your industry. So it's helping them understand kind of what that means, what that looks like. It's not, I think they think there's an advantage of looking like everybody else, when truly the advantage is standing out from everybody else.
I can see how they would think that though, right? Because if you look at like the Nike, the Adidas, the Chase Bank, you look at the big brands, and one would have to think, well, they're doing it right. I want to be as close to that as possible, right? But you're right. I think the reason why social media works when it works is because it stands out. There's way too much, right? So when, like, your logo, for instance, I would say it's one of the most standout logos I've seen in a while. I mean, it's bold. It's it's aggressive. Tell me a little bit, if you can, since I've taken the mic for just a second.
Yep.
Tell me what goes into your identity. Looking at the pit bull, for instance, or I'm sorry, that's a bulldog, isn't it? Bulldog.
It is, yeah.
Bulldog, Cyberdogz. So tell us what goes into that, just so I can get an understanding where you were thinking with that on your identity.
Well, I'll back up one step, and even people have asked, like, the name. So the name Cyberdogz, like, oh, we love it. Where did you come up with that, or whatever? And the funny part is we came up with it 20 some years ago when we were just still doing websites for beer and pizza. And it was something we came up with 20 years ago with not a lot of logic or not a lot of thought put into it. But then fast forward 20 years, when I was leaving corporate and ready to make Cyberdogz an official entrepreneurial venture, I reached out to a lot of different people I kind of liked and trusted in the industry, and I had created a name list for myself that was like 75 names, and I had thrown Cyberdogz in the mix of those 75 names and sent it out. I believe it was about 19-20 people I sent it to, and out of those 20-ish people, Cyberdogz came back in the top 3 every time of those 20 people, and none of the other names that I had come up with did. So, like, I looked at that and thought, well, A, there's some legacy to it, but B, it's clearly, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, it came back in the top 3 out of 20 people. Let's build a brand around that, because there's something there. There's something that I think we can work with. So we started kind of backwards in the process, to be honest. I wouldn't give my clients that advice, but that's how we got there. And then what we did is we just built kind of, well, why did we pick a bulldog? Why the light? All these different things. So we built kind of a universe around that. And it's the tenacity of a bulldog, the idea of we can be your brand's loyal companion. We can be our client's, like a man's best friend. We can be your client's best friend. We started to really explore all these characteristics of not only dogs in general, but the bulldog, and then building a brand around that so we could, really kind of have something unique, but also practice what we preach. So, like, you'll even see, like, at our logo, the light bulb in the middle and the dog kind of around it. Like, whenever we build a brand for our clients, our goal is to create an icon that's extremely stand out, but at the same time, there should be a clever nuance in it that's almost hard to identify, depending on, there should be a conversation piece around it. And
that is really cool. That light bulb in the mouth kind of thing. It's like, is it that the ideas come from within?
Well, it's cool. It's kind of a backwards mistake again, is that it's cool because the ideas do come from within, and it's this idea of creation. But we get people that see the logo as an entirety and they're like, hey, cool logo. We get people that say, are you an electrician? All I see is a light bulb. And then I get people that see a dog with no light bulb. And I've had people ask, well, is that bad? Is that good? And I'm like, as long as they're looking at it and asking questions and it's burning a hole in their brain, that's all I care about. Like, I would love it if they saw it for what it is, but it doesn't necessarily mean they saw it wrong if they only see a light bulb, or if they only see the dog, because some people just aren't wired to see it like that. Like if you guys remember those posters back in the early 2000s, where if you stared at it long enough, it turned into a, you know, a sailboat or something.
Yeah.
Not everybody could see that. So whatever that is, whatever that cleverness is that we try to bake into all these brands, you know, as long as it's creating some kind of conversation for the client, we consider it a win. So, okay, you can go to the next slide, Damien, if you would.
We're there.
So defining the identity and really,
you should see define your value, right?
Go back one to number 4.
You don't see number 5, Kevin?
He wants you to go back to 4.
Yep. Go to 4. Sorry. Yeah, so number 4 is really helping the clients define their identity. And that, yes, again, is that visual piece, but it's also how they want to be perceived. So again, checking the box, hey, I got my logo, I've got my colors, yep, those are all good things. But the question is how do you want to be perceived in your industry? Do you want to be perceived as cheap? Do you want to be perceived as the best? Do you want to be perceived as quality? And then building a narrative around that. So the other supporting elements of that brand is that if you're going to create a really kick-ass logo and try to set the tone with that logo, you need to have a website that kind of bakes into that and dovetails into that from a quality perspective and the look and feel. Then the copy that we create within the website needs to tell a story that helps you better understand the brand and help you better understand the values and the different pieces that, you know, you might be offering to the industry or the clients. So as we start to kind of go down that road of branding, whether it's website, print collateral, whatever it is, you start to connect these dots and tell this bigger story as to who you are and why we're different. And it's not something a client's going to sit down and do 2 hours worth of research and kind of learn you in a 45-minute sit down. They're going to absorb it over time. They're going to experience it. They're going to see it visually. And kind of like I mentioned with like pumping in that scent of fresh cut almonds, they're going to kind of absorb it through their skin. And then it'll all start to make sense over time. But you have to plant those seeds along the way. So now you can go to 5, please.
Yep, trying. Sucks. There we go.
So defining the value. Again, not that there can't be more of them, but it's kind of a walk before you run mindset that when you're creating your brand, you want to really focus in on the things you do really, really, really well. So like many times you'll hear people say, hey, I want to start a business. And sometimes you'll say, well, what kind of business? And they'll say, I don't know. I just feel like starting something. That's a scary place to be. So to take a step back from that, what you should be thinking about is, well, what are you really good at? You know, are you a really good baker? Are you really good at carpentry? Like, try to start there so that you can build kind of a direction and kind of a model around that. So building out and kind of focusing on what you do really well, it's a process of trying to turn a battleship in a bathtub. It takes time. Now, I say 1 to 2 years. That's not an exact science there, but the benefit of giving yourself that time is you're giving yourself time to train the customer and introduce the customer to who you are, but you're also buying yourself time to figure out who you are, because you're building this new brand, you're building this new identity. And then sometimes you could just be calibrating all the things that you inherently kind of took advantage of yourself, because sometimes we don't know what our strengths are or how to, you know, kind of bring that into our business. And it's a process of kind of learning how you can naturally do that. So it buys you time by building a brand plan that matches that. Now you can go to number 6, please.
Should be there.
Yep, got it.
Okay, cool.
And then really it's about execution at that point. So like there's a huge part of branding that's, lack of a better word, it's fluffy. Like it can be very philosophical and like, what does all this mean? Because, I just started my business. I need to start making some sales. If I'm not making money, it ain't working. Like there's a lot of, you're wearing two kind of hats in this process. But part of what feeds that more analytical side of your brain when you're building a brand is baking in a plan and creating a plan around it so that you can kind of see yourself chugging through the milestones and not get too caught up in the fluff. Like I'm somebody who can live in the fluff and I'm fine with it, but I realize in business, not everybody can. So like Kevin and I do a lot of work in the financial space, and no offense to any financial people, but they're not the most creative devils in the world. So we have to create kind of a plan that drags them through the process and shows them milestones and victories along the way so that they can slowly comprehend kind of what's going on. And it's not that they're dumb, their brains just don't think like that. Like we have clients that are super aggressive and don't care. Like they're like, we don't care. You guys do what you do. They don't want to understand.
I can see you physically dragging a numbers guy through the creative.
Kicking and screaming. And then they see somebody else doing it. And they say, oh, we should be doing that. Well, how come you're not doing that? Because you didn't want to do it.
Yeah. And it's a process. And what we've done though, is we've identified it first of all, and we just embrace it as part of the journey. So inherently what we're seeing, even with some of our clients, is we're getting credit for having been the guys who tolerated them, because they've already burned through 3 or 4 agencies by the time they get to us. And then they work with us and go, well, you guys are, at least you let me ask questions and all this stuff. And, for us, we've just adopted the mindset of, well, we know it's going to be this way to some degree. It might be different or a little bit more extreme depending on the client. But at this point, we just know that they're like that. So Damien, if you want to jump to 7, next slide.
You able to see when I click it? Because I click it and it goes pretty quick.
Are you seeing it? Okay. So number 7 is just the idea of kind of creating all the aspects of it. So with social media, with all these different platforms, with everything going on, everybody wants to just jump to well, I want to be on TikTok or I want to be on Facebook. Everybody wants to jump to these platforms, which if you can sustain it, if you have the resources to do it, if you have the mindset to execute all these things, go nuts. Great. But for your brand's sake and for your own sake, I would start out with the ones you can succeed on and build your way into those, and then take on whatever you want to take on after the fact, or any new ones that come along as you get your arms around it. Because what happens is all of these platforms become a conduit for your brand. And if you're not executing at a high level on all these different platforms, you're actually polluting your brand growth and actually making it harder for people to truly understand what you do. So brand consistency and how you use these tools, these platforms, and these different things to your advantage, it has to be very calculated and planned out. Again, not that you don't want to get there and you don't want to be in all places, but you want to be very methodical about it. Or, what we see with a lot of clients is they get 2 or 3, 4 years down the road and their brand is a total disaster, and they're like, can you help me dial this in? I think I need to rebrand, or like they almost want to start over because it's become such a mess. We'll go to the next one, Damien.
Ready?
And this is the one, number 8 is build your network. And a couple things out of this. Cyberdogz is a very relationship-based agency company, like whether it's with clients, partners, the people on the team, like we're all about the people first, and the work just takes care of itself. When we first started it that way, I can't say I didn't believe that, but now that I'm 8 years into it, like now I'm just blind trust. The work will take care of itself if you build those relationships. So as you're building your brand, I stress to my clients to think strategically and to build networks around who you might be able to leverage and build in with your brand. It doesn't mean you got to go straight into partnerships. It doesn't mean you have to build an affiliate network or anything like that. But if all you're seeing as a brand, if you see it's kind of like, if you see everything as a hammer, everything's going to be a nail. It's the same with the brand, that if you see everybody as competition, you're not going to see these different opportunities where you might be able to springboard off of, collaborate, co-brand different things. So like,
that's very good advice. That is very good advice. I mean, really looking to align with your competition instead of, just being threatened by all of it.
Yeah. And you don't know where it's going to go is kind of the big point there, because like in the first year of Cyberdogz, I didn't really know where it was going to go either, but I was reaching out to every agency in my area and asking them if they would ever be interested in collaborations. And I was reaching out to artists and saying, hey, I don't know what, but would you ever want to work with us? And I was just throwing lines in the water wherever I could, because I didn't know where this stuff was going to take us. Now, fast forwarding 8 years, we've done all kinds of projects with, comic book artists from DC and Marvel Comics. We did a collaborative bike build with Milwaukee Tools a couple years ago. We went from being a creative agency just doing like logos and brand build outs to websites, SEO, mobile apps, paid ads. Like, we've found partners in the industry and opportunities where we could just kind of flex and have creative fun because we were open to those ideas. So like, that's another thing that, not everybody takes us up on it, but when we build brands for our clients, I encourage them to not only keep track of, pay attention to your competition, but don't be afraid to be their friend. If you need to reach out to them, ask them some questions, do it. They might not answer you, but the 1 or 2 times that they do respond, or somebody does open the door for collaboration, it's only going to lead to good things.
Okay.
You want to go to number 9? And this just kind of goes with number 8, but it's really the idea of joining forces. So the all ships rise with the tide kind of mentality, and kind of finding a way to leverage the opportunities within your brand. So like, we started out Cyberdogz as yes, we're a creative agency, but we're relationship first. And as part of that relationship first, we wanted to be a conduit for our partners. So we have some partners where we might have spent 2 years just giving them leads or passing our clients through to them. But what we got out of that is we got an opportunity to build, a brand relationship with that partner. But we also then became the guy in the middle who knew how to get things. So like, if you remember the movie Shawshank Redemption, when he goes to Morgan Freeman was the guy who knew how to get things. That's Cyberdogz now. So yes, they come to us and they say, hey, Mike, do you know anybody that does XYZ? And 9 times out of 10, I say, yep, I got a guy. You want us to figure it out for you? Yep, go ahead. And all of a sudden, now they're coming to us with the questions that they didn't know we were equipped to even answer, but we're just circulating them within our little universe. So now they come to us with a logo, and we build them a logo. We do their website, we do their marketing. But now they're asking us for merch and apparel. And now they're asking us to do a custom motorcycle build, which I never thought in a million years I'd be in that opportunity. But it's just keeping that line of communication open and knowing that, yeah, they're going to come asking questions. And if you're prepared to answer them, you can basically.
I got my Cyberdogz bottle warmer, or not warmer, bottle cooler.
Yep.
Sleeve. That's cool. Kevin gave me this out in Las Vegas. I got 2 of them, one for me and Nick.
So, and that's the kind of stuff, like even that partner who helped facilitate that, we've probably done, 6 figures worth of just merch and promotional apparel because of that relationship, which is huge. I mean, it's obviously not our bread and butter. It's not what we lead with, but it's a supplemental piece that helps the experience of hey, that Cyberdogz guy, he can figure it out.
Yep. And every time around happy hour, when they're enjoying their frosty beverage, they remember you.
Yep.
That's kind of like the relationship with Komodo Coffee also, Mike. If you want to tell that story, where they basically turned us down at first, outsourced it to India, I think, and then ended up coming back to us and hiring us.
Yeah, it was funny because they were it was a West Coast agency that they found us through one of our other partners, actually. So that's where the partnership thing kicks in. But once they got a chance to kind of experience working with us, they remembered us. So they actually asked us for a proposal. We turned it in, and for whatever reason, they didn't pick us. 6 months later, when they needed somebody to help them, they called us back and said, well, we know we didn't pick you, and sorry about that, but you guys seem like good dudes, and you'd seem like you'd help us, and you seem like you had a different approach to these kinds of things, and we really need somebody who can help us. And we ended up essentially bailing them out of a pretty huge jam. But at the same time, for us, it was an opportunity to kind of prove that model and prove that relationships come first, but then also, strategically, hey, that'd be fun to do something on the West Coast, because typically we're doing stuff in the Midwest, so it was kind of a neat opportunity. And you never know when they're going to show up. They might show up 6 months after the fact, but they do show up.
Yeah, and then they paid us more than what we asked for also.
Yeah.
Because we bailed them out. So yeah.
Yep. If you want to advance to the next one, Damien.
I've got the who are you slide up.
Yep. So that's the big question in this. And I always end kind of the process with this. Branding can be very, like I said, it can be very complex, and there's a lot of angles, a lot to figure out. But at its core, and I don't like leading with this because I think this has become a little overused. And if you want to advance to the next slide, it's about remaining authentic. And what that means is, I know the buzzword of authenticity is heavy in the brand marketing space right now. And I say that because I don't think everybody really understands what that means. So being authentic to me, or to Cyberdogz, is that we want to do the things we say we're going to do, and we want to honor our commitments and do all those things that people expect of us. But we also want to build a brand that represents who we are as people. So you'll see in the Cyberdogz brand, you'll see different call outs and collaborations to Air Jordans, to different brands that that we love as a team. And you'll see us inject a lot of cartooning and different things into our own personal branding. You'll see us make references to AC/DC music, or like, we'll just bring a lot of personal elements into our brand, so that everything that we put out, we don't have to try so hard to sell it. We don't have to put on a fake facade to kind of present our brand a certain way. They're just going to spend some time with us and go, okay, that matches. And that's the approach that we want. And I know that's not easy for everybody to kind of wrap their minds around, but we've always been kind of forward with our own brand to make sure that we were living kind of the teachings that we were putting out there. So like, even our own brand style guide, we just finished a revamp of our own brand style guide. It's the most deluxe brand style guide I've ever done, intentionally, because it talks all about those pieces that I've just covered. It goes as far as saying why we look up to Evel Knievel versus Steve Jobs, why we think Bruce Lee was, very philosophical compared to, Richard Branson. Like, we have our own little nuances in there, so that we can kind of lead by example in that way from the authenticity standpoint, but also then so we can use that as a model to help illustrate it to our clients when they struggle to go that far. Because that's the nice part about what we do, is not many of our clients can go that far on their own. So us kind of teaching them the process and helping them create a brand that lives by those principles is part of the journey and part of the experience for them.
Now, question for you. What, with speaking to the style guide, what goes into the orange? A lot of use of orange. So I'm curious what your thought was on that.
I personally, I like the color orange, and I was always looking at, I study brands and I'm thinking, okay, two things. One is, what color do I want that's really going to align with, I want to be elite, right? I want to match, I want to look like, I want to feel that feeling of lacing up that new pair of basketball shoes, the first time ever, and those kinds of things. And Nike was a color, they use orange. Harley Davidson is obviously one of the biggest brands in the world. So that's what kind of migrated us, at least it helped it make the list. And then what I did is I went and there's basically color theory behind each color as to what those colors mean. So if you go look for the color spectrum, it'll tell you what orange, blue, green, and if you look at industries, you'll see an industry consistency and kind of a pattern as to what industries use what colors, and it's based off of these different feelings. So when I looked at all the different meanings and the feelings behind what these colors are supposed to invoke, orange being an optimistic color and kind of being a positive color, that's why I chose it, because I want everything we do to be fun. And I know it's work and it's business and sometimes it's not fun, but if 99% of the time I can enjoy what I do and create something just for the sake of doing it, like we really like doing projects that don't make sense, because those are the ones that work out the best. And part of that optimism, part of the why we chose orange was because of that.
So we love projects that don't make sense, because those are the ones that end up being the, wow, right. That's interesting. And so when you say don't make sense, you mean don't make sense to the average person, or don't make sense even to you? Well, they make sense to you, right? Because they make the cut.
Well, sort of, but like, it's like when Milwaukee, when we started that project with Milwaukee Tool and building that motorcycle with Janus Motorcycles.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that, I have bills to pay too, and I own a business, and I think this isn't going to help us financially at all. We're not really making any money. We're going to end up donating probably more time in this than we're getting paid for. I'm not in the motorcycle business, so I mean, that's not going to help me. Like, when I really do the math on it, it probably wasn't a really smart business decision. But then when I put my 12-year-old Mike hat on and think, well, building a motorcycle would be pretty cool. And co-branding with Milwaukee Tools is like, you don't get those opportunities every day. And what kind of cool content could we get out of it? So there's some value there. When I look at it through a different lens, that's how it makes the cut.
Got it.
And I'm glad I'm able to do that, because those are the ones that help us stand out, and they create a story, and they create a kind of a proving ground as to why we're different and who we are, and kind of why we can back it up sometimes with some of that stuff.
And that solidified a relationship with Janus Motorcycles that we eventually did a call with them, and I evaluated some of their paid traffic strategies that they were doing and stuff, and now they're kind of open to saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't do all this ourselves. Maybe we should look at an agency to help us out with some things.
Yeah.
So I'll start off with some questions. So what is your typical client size, Mike, for Cyberdogz marketing? I guess in two forms of question. One is the typical size of the business, and then the typical size of engagement with you.
I'd say most clients are somewhere at least in our 80%, they're somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million, $500,000 and $1 million a year. I would say somewhere in there on average. And then we have two types of clients. We have our retainer clients and our project clients. Project clients are the ones who come with, they know what they want. I want a website, I want a brand, they kind of know what they're looking for. And our goal with project clients is, yes, we'll do the project for X, Y, and Z dollars. But my goal is always to kind of feel it out to see how the relationship is, and then convert them to retainer. So sometimes they start at retainer, or sometimes they start at project, but the goal is always to get them to retainer. Then I have other clients that come to us and they just need so much. Like, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. And by the time I kind of line list those items and start doing proposals, I know that I'm headed towards a situation where they're going to have sticker shock. It's going to be too much. So what I do is say they need, 5, 6, 7 things. I'll come up with a rough number of what I think that's going to cost and kind of the time frame in which I believe we can execute it. And then I'll parse it out over the course of months. So I'll basically propose it back to them that everything you asked us for, it's going to take us roughly 9 to 12 months to execute. It's going to cost you, call it for good math, it's going to cost you $120,000. Why don't you just pay us X amount per month and we'll just take it as it comes? Because we have to go through steps A, B, C before we get to D, E, and F anyway. So there's no reason why we can't just take it as a monthly retainer, and then they can financially digest it. And then what essentially that does is it buys us time to help them kind of fall into this retainer process, but at the same time, us evaluate whether or not we want to be with them for the long haul.
Yeah. And it's creating cash flow, with you making these monthly arrangements, you're creating cash flow. You're easier to do business with them. So you're getting more people to take you on, again, if they're the right client, because I'm sure you get to pick your clients these days, right?
Yep.
And
we have a filter for sure. Yep.
So I'll want to hit you on that, but just to finalize the last question on what is a typical engagement with you guys, like on a per month basis for the ones that take you on for the whole kit and caboodle.
It's anywhere from 5 to 10,000. I'd say the average that we're taking on now is 6,500 to 7,500 a month
per month. Got it. Okay, so now let's talk about the clients you like and the clients you don't like. What are your methods for identifying the clients you don't like? And then, how do you avoid letting them in your chicken coop, I guess?
We're always trying to dial up the filter. It's hard because we're very open, like everybody gets the benefit of the doubt. We're very open. Kevin and other people tell me I'm too nice all the time. And I think we got to start that way. At least when the conversation starts, we got to just see where this thing goes. Because sometimes when they come to us, they're coming to us with baggage from a bad experience, or they're coming to us with a misconceived notion of how this really works because their sister-in-law went to college for marketing, or there's a little bit of a process there where we have to figure out if they have a chip on their shoulder, why? What is this? So once we get them to that point, that's when we start to evaluate whether or not they're going to be easy to work with or they're going to be difficult to work with. And kind of the deal breakers there for us that kind of separate the good from the bad is whether or not their expectations are in line and if they have trust. Because if they don't trust us to do what we do, we're kind of doomed to fail, because if we start reacting to the stuff that they want us to do or how they want us to do it, whether we like it or not, we're still tethered to the results on the other side. So if I'm not doing it my way and I'm doing it your way, should I really be responsible for the end result?
Yeah,
that's where we get into trouble. And like I said, we've dialed in that filter where there's always a bad one that sneaks through from time to time, but I'd say 8, 9 out of 10 times we're pretty good at getting the good ones. But it's an ongoing process, because Kevin and I probably talk on a weekly basis about how we're going to turn that filter up even more, or layer in a new filter to help us kind of avoid that thing in the past. Because especially when we're growing as a company and growing, we're increasing our rates and we're adding people, the more complex this gets, the more the filter has to be kind of dialed up to make sure we're getting the right kind of clients.
Well, and what's really inspiring, and for all of you that are on here, if you picked up on this, and now we'll dive a little bit deeper, if his average client is $6,500 a month, that's $78,000 per year. And so the nice thing about this is you really don't need to have a ton of clients to be making a really good income as a company, right? I mean, you have 10 clients And, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of annual revenue. That's a lot of monthly recurring revenue. And it's extremely valuable. But, so how many clients do you actually have to work with this model?
Well, what's crazy about it, and I really didn't do
Or
the
get to work with would be the way.
yeah, I really didn't do the math on this till probably the last couple of years, but we've averaged roughly, call it 55 to 65 clients total per year. And that's a mix of project and retainer. So that's, roughly who we work with in a year. And some of those are projects that are clients that come back for more stuff down the road. But in the last 3 years, we've went from roughly 65 clients a year total to 50 to 45. So we're actually decreasing the amount of clients that we're tackling per year, but we're increasing our revenue by, I think we were up 60, 70%, something like that last year. And we have roughly about 10 to 12 clients that are full retainer year over year. So we know that we confidently have stable income on those 10 to 12. And then the other 40 plus are the ones that are coming back for more stuff. And then the crazy part of it is that in 8 years, we've only lost 3 clients.
Yeah. So retainer clients are being added each year, and the churn is very small.
Yeah.
Now, for our mobile app resellers and white label partners on here, how much are you charging for mobile apps?
Well, we're still getting that kind of baked into the process, but we have, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 clients that it's a matter of logistics of when they're going to kind of step into the mobile app piece, because we have to launch their website. We have to get a few other pieces in place, but we're going to use the mobile app piece. It could be a standalone sale too. It's not that it can't, but we're really going to look at our existing clients and treat it as an add-on, because we want to present it to them as hey, we've got this new exciting new service we're rolling out. We want you to be part of it. And through that process, I think there's going to be at least 4 to 5 right out of the gate that we're going to be starting with, because we already have that pool of people sitting there.
Mary Jo's was 3,500, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. 3,500 for Mary Jo Erman's.
Cool. Now I'm going to open it up to questions for the audience. If anybody has a question you've been dying to ask, or maybe Derek, if you see some in the chat, 'cause I don't see a chat box here. And then if anybody wants to come on audio as well and ask Mike and or Kevin a question, go ahead. Now's your time. And the idea here, I think, with today's topic, if you're really letting this sink in, is your personal brand and your business brand, your agency brand are important, and you need to think bigger and come up with the things that are separating yourself from all the other digital marketing agencies or people that are out trying to be digital marketing agencies. But then also the education that you can take to the client level, because if you're doing marketing for your client and the branding is not intact, you're going to struggle trying to deliver them results. And so I really think that this is a necessary part of the process to do marketing for businesses, is if their brand isn't already identified and if their brand isn't already very clear, then you're going to have to do some brand work. Wouldn't you agree with that, Mike? That to try to pull results, whether it be organic or paid, you're going to struggle if there's lack of a brand message and lack of consistency, right?
Yeah, I think branding is one of the biggest missed opportunities by most companies, including agencies. Like in my area in the upper Midwest, there's 4 or 5 really big agencies in my area that, they're probably doing in the hundreds of millions of dollars a year, where their brand sucks. And it's like, my question to them is, how much money are you leaving on the table because you're not even developing your own brand? So like, you're not necessarily getting noticed, being found. You're not building a loyal, brand loving community. You're doing so well without it. Just imagine if you did it. Like, imagine if you layered that on top, because we all, it's kind of like, I use the analogy sometimes, like if you walk into a restaurant and the lights are kind of dim and it feels dingy and Like you're gonna make a snap judgment the minute you walk in that place as to whether or not you want to eat there, whether or not you
I can hear my wife now. No, we're not staying here.
exactly. So when they meet you and they meet your brand and they experience you, why give them that opportunity? Like, why not give them something where they go, okay, this is really next level. I've not seen something like this before. If you can hit them with some level of confidence before they've ever spent a nickel with you, you're going to end up in a better place and you're going to make more money as a result.
All right, Chris had a question in here. Can the industry you focus on define your brand?
Personally, I think it can influence your brand, but I do not think it can define you, because that's where we get sucked into that monkey see, monkey do stuff. Especially with our financial clients. Everybody's looking at everybody at all times, and we all want to feel kind of financial and kind of banky in a way. And like, I always take them a step back and say, I'm not saying that's a bad thing if it fits your authenticity and if it fits who you are as a brand, but let's start there. So like, we've created some really funky brands for people in the financial space that they don't look financial at all, but they look awesome. They stand out amongst the crowd. And now that they have the confidence of knowing where that brand is derived from, which is themselves, they're 10 foot tall and bulletproof when they're out there trying to grow their business. And that's important. That confidence is huge. So I definitely think it can influence it and enhance it, but it's not defining. No.
All right. So Kevin, what question should I be asking for Mike to give some more value to the community here?
I wanted to make a comment about the branding side of it. On my side of the house with paid media, a strong brand definitely makes a huge difference. And we see that, and especially when we bring on a new client that doesn't have a strong brand and they're trying to make paid media work, it just doesn't. And then it depends on them whether or not they fade out within 2 or 3 months or not. I think, I don't know, what other questions can you think of, Mike, that we left out?
You know, I think the other part I would say about just wrapping your brain around this and the importance of this is that, you know, your business and how you build your life, feed your family, pay your bills, like it's one of the most important things you have in your life. And I think when you spend the time to build the right foundation around it, you're only going to do yourself that much more of a solid. I think we can all agree that appearances matter. I think we can all agree that, you know, if you're going to a job interview, you get your best tie out and you do all that, right? If you're going to your first date with your significant other, you throw a shower on and you shave and you do all these things because appearances matter. But then when it comes to your business, I don't know if I want to spend any money on that. That's where it doesn't make any sense to me when I get a client that comes to me and doesn't think it's a worthy investment to put money into their brand. And it's like, but you're doing it everywhere else. You've accepted this idea of presentation in every aspect of your life, especially like I get a lot of realtors that come to me and ask me questions and whatever. And 9 times out of 10, they're driving a Mercedes or they're wearing a 3-piece suit or, you know, whatever. They're completely, presentation is not lost on them whatsoever, but yet they have a hard time wrapping their mind around why they would invest money in their brand. And to me, it's like, well, but your career, because you're a real estate agent and because you're driving the Mercedes and you're building all this stuff around who you are, you clearly know that presentation matters, but your biggest vehicle for financial gain is the part you're neglecting. It makes no sense. And that's like, when I talk to people about branding, it's not a sales pitch. It's just kind of what I believe and where my mind goes when people don't see it that way, because to me, it's a huge opportunity. Like I mentioned it earlier, if you've ever been to an Apple store, you've experienced branding at a different level And why wouldn't you want people to feel that way about your stuff,
So Mike, they still wear ties?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about personal brand for a minute. So,
Yeah.
I saw on your slides that it's important to also, focus on your personal brand as well as your company brand. And I think that could be helpful for everybody on here because, there's the whole separation of church and state. And like, I don't want to put any business stuff on my personal page and vice versa. And, how important is that personal brand, when you're an agency brand? And what's too much, or what's just enough, because I can tell you now that, one thing that I don't do a lot is post a lot of business stuff on my Facebook page. Because whenever I do, my personal Facebook page, because when I do, I get 2 likes. And then I post my grandchild up there and I get 100. So I get that they don't want to see the company stuff on the personal, but I do understand that the social media channels are the only way our personal brand is put out in the public.
Yeah, I think it's about finding balance of, again, kind of being aware of who you are, but it's also everything that goes with it, and giving people the same experience from having a personal connection or a relationship with Damien versus having a relationship with Damien on the business side. So I came from a culture of corporate where we wore shirts and ties every day. You weren't allowed to have facial hair. Like, it was a very strict corporate existence. And it wasn't to necessarily fight the man or to go the other way. But when I left that world, I just decided I wanted to be whatever I want to be. When I walk out of here, I'm going to be how I want to be. And within some, not that I won't dress it up if I'm going to a certain kind of meeting, but I wear Air Jordans, t-shirts, and baseball caps every day. And my compromise there is that I try to wear a lot of stuff that matches my brand. I wear the color orange a lot. I wear my own brand every day. And that's just become part of the brand vehicle. Some people will go, dude, you're a walking billboard. Yeah, I am. But at the same time, it's part of my personal brand, and it feeds my professional brand at the same time. So as we've started to build out our podcast and to do different things in the community, I didn't intend it to be that way, but who Mike is as a person is very much part of who Cyberdogz is as a brand now. So how those dots get connected is really important. Now, where it gets a little muddy is when people say, well, so I should put political views on my business page. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that your personal brand, and you can choose you don't have to do it from the onset, but when you do it, wherever you're at in the process, they should match each other, because your professional brand is derived from the personal, and when and why you should do the personal depends on what your motivations are. If you're going to do public speaking, if you're going to, maybe you are going to build a podcast or be a guest on somebody else's podcast, there might be a reason or a right time in which the personal brand kind of needs to develop, but they're kind of one and the same organically, whether you like it or not.
We've got a question from Steve. How did you end up focusing on the finance industry?
We pulled on a string and it just kept coming. We ended up building, everything we do is based on relationships. So we ended up meeting a guy. It started out with a guy named Wade Borth, who's a super nice guy. And his industry was finance, which is kind of a snooze fest, but it's not really about the industry for me. It's more about the person. So I was like, well, it's Wade Borth. Let's work with Wade, regardless of industry. Well, we worked with Wade, did a good job for him, and Wade led to Mary Jo, which led to Tammy, which led to, and all of a sudden we're 15 people down the line now. And it was only because we took a chance on a guy who was super nice guy. And that's
don't you love how that happens?
Yeah. That
wasn't by mistake or accident. That's just supposed to happen. That's your journey playing out for you.
Yeah. And I tell clients this, I don't really like the financial industry. That's why
you're so good in it.
Well, that's why we end up building motorcycles and we end up doing kind of weird things, because that kind of scratches that creative itch to a degree. But at the same time, we know that we can make impact and do good things in this industry. And sometimes what we do, it's not really about the industry anyway, because I can get creative in any industry. It's just whether or not that group of people accepts it the same way. And what's interesting, even with the financial industry, is because they've kind of already admitted it to themselves that they're not creative, they're actually more trusting than other industries I've been in. Because if I go into an industry where people think they're kind of creative, we end up butting heads all the time because they want to lead, they want to drive. They don't want to trust us enough to do our jobs. Where in the financial space, they're like, you do it. Okay. So we've got the freedom to kind of do more, really.
Awesome. All right. Any other questions from any of you on here today? Please feel free to unmute or pop it in the chat, whatever you're feeling comfortable with today. Joe, you usually have a good question for us. Anybody?
Yeah, I do have a question, Mike. I'm transitioning from working with a PR agency now and going into marketing, and so I'm still under, let's say, the old PR agency, now creating my new brand, which is Phoenix Marketing, and a lot of people know me under the other brand. So now so it was a question that Damien brought up. Do you start your personal brand or your company brand? So I'm going through that transition and say, how am I going to present myself? And so in fact, I'm, doing some branding for the Phoenix Marketing and selecting some of those colors, which the color happened to be orange as well, and navy blue. So I'm trying to figure out, how do I transition as Joe or as Phoenix Marketing now from the start? What would you recommend, or what have you done for a client who's maybe perhaps been in a similar situation where they're exiting out of one industry going to another, or just going through a revamp?
Are you going to maintain kind of your spot in both industries, or are you going to vacate one for another?
I'm going to vacate one for the other.
Then I would kind of do a clean, kind of a brand break, so to speak, and kind of reinvent yourself on the other side with this new brand. But the other way that I was thinking, if you were going to be in both, is a lot of times, you can create a family of brands or almost a connection of it, so that if somebody does look back at your lineage, they can see the evolution of how you got from one stage of your career to another. So like another way that we do that with our own stuff is, so we have Cyberdogz, we have Brand Retro podcast, we have Kevin and I are working on something called Cyberdogz University. They're all separate brands and separate entities, but I'm just building enough kind of connection between them so that sometimes they look like siblings if they're close, or I'll make them look like first cousins, but there are similarities in all of them. So that when and if I have to present them together, or I need to tell my brand story, or for my personal brand, I'm saying, hey, here's the things I'm involved in, they can see the connection between them all. Because I think that's, again, the subliminally, you're trying to help them understand. And sometimes that's a visual thing. So it's important that they at least connect on some level.
I see. Okay.
So is the separation, is the previous brand your brand also?
No, it was a collaboration with another partner.
Okay.
And so now we were more focused on working with nonprofits.
Right.
Now it's business to business. So I'm focusing more on the business aspect of it. And
yeah. So I would take this opportunity you're kind of making a clean break, but you're building a brand that, because I would imagine leaving one and going to another, you're having some kind of a career shift where I want to reinvent myself in this way, use that as your fuel to create a brand that represents that. So when you go out then and tell your story of, here's my new business and here's why I'm doing this, now you've got the narrative. It's already pre-written because it's all elements of your new brand. That's the other thing I didn't mention it, that your brand should, yes, it should tell a story, but it should make you kind of stocked and loaded and ready to sell it because it's already baked in.
Good stuff.
Yes,
All
thank
right. Well, thank you for that question, Joe. I'm going to take you through the lightning round, sir. I prepped you for this. So the first question of the lightning round that I'll ask you is the best advice you've ever received. Keyword is ever received.
Man, I don't even remember what I told you. Let me look here. What did I say? I can't even remember.
Well, let's see. You're the first person that actually filled out
Oh, I'm ready.
them as if they were questions. He actually sent me the answers back. I never had them in advance.
Well, a couple. I'll give you a couple. One is that when I first started my business, I was a little reluctant to take the leap, to leave the full-time gig and to take the leap. And the question that was asked of me at the time, the person asked me, "Well, are you employable?" And I didn't know what he meant. And I said, "Well, what do you mean employable?" And he's like, "Well, if you lost your job today, could you get another job?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he's like, "Well, then why wouldn't you try this?" And the next day is when I put my 2-week notice in, and 2 weeks later, I started a company called Cyberdogz. So that was a really profound piece of advice, or at least a challenge that was posed to me, that kind of left an impact on me. And the other thing that this is what I sent to Damien, is that the brand should be a reflection of the person or the people behind it. So many times, people work for a company or they build a brand around a logo or an industry, or it's not something they feel passionate about because nobody's ever gone to that level to make them see the connections between it. And if you're getting an opportunity to build your own brand and to cultivate something from the ground up, the more of yourself or the people behind you, your team, whatever, the more of that you can inject into the brand, the more internal brand love you're going to get out of it. So
Awesome. Mike, tell them how they can follow you and Kevin and Cyberdogz.
Yeah, we have all our social links on the website, but if you go to cyberdogzmarketing.com, that's our website, and we have all our social links on there. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, things like that. And then we also have a podcast called the Brand Retro Podcast, and that is brandretro.com.
Excellent. And Derek will post that in there for the chat. Also, a book that you would recommend to this group, and why?
2 really good books that I've read this last year: The Virgin Way by Richard Branson, where he talks about how he started the Virgin brand and Virgin Records and some of the different things that he did, from the practical entrepreneurship stuff to the kind of the crazy out of the box stuff that actually worked for him.
That's a guy that gets brand.
Yeah. And it's just an interesting, because it's very unconventional, his whole story is. So that was kind of fascinating. And then the other one is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, where he talks about kind of how he went through his kind of journey to become what he's become by being able to see opportunity.
I'm going to pick that one up. I like Matthew. That's cool.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. A tool, resource, hack, software, something that you'd recommend other than one of your own to this group, and why?
Well, generally, to keep your eye out on technology and how it's evolving. So whether it's Adobe Suite or anything you use on the regular, a lot of times we get caught up in the process of using it how we use it, and you forget to kind of pay attention to the bells and whistles that are getting released month over month and year over year. If you can stay up on that, the beauty of that is obviously you're evolving your trade, but at the same time, there are so many efficiency hacks that are built in there that you don't have to do it the old way anymore. You can do it at probably twice the rate of speed if you pay attention to those evolutions. And Kevin will like this one, but find out how to leverage ChatGPT. Like, to me, like, if you want to shave some time off some projects, or just even add a little mustard to something you're doing, ChatGPT can help you get there, or it could even be an idea generation tool. Like I use Chat GPT to just, like if I just I'm pondering a question, like, I'll just pop it into Chat GPT to see what it brings back. And even if it doesn't give me the answer, it'll put me on a path that I wasn't yet thinking of. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, well, what about this? So it is just, I mean, just find out how to leverage it, play with it, use it, and
it's spot on for your topic today, because Chat GPT, I'm sure, could really help give you inspiration to building out your brand. For instance, you can put a prompt in to suggest brand characteristics based on, you can put some personality traits, you can, like take action, you can put, you could actually prompt it to give you cues that could then start to identify that brand for you. And then once you've identified a brand, you can go deeper for the characteristics, and then you can go even deeper. Kevin, any thought on that?
Yeah, and I think you could actually use a prompt, if it's worded correctly, for color theory, to actually give you like your 3 core brand colors or variations of different color combinations through that. I haven't tried that because I haven't thought of it until Mike just mentioned what he did, but that might be something that we work on also here in this next week, and show up in my newsletter for the AI update.
I've even used it to if I have a half-baked thought over here and I know it kind of connects to this idea, but if I'm struggling to even wrap my brain around something, but I can kind of tell that like it's something I just need to kind of figure it out, I'll pop those elements in Chat GPT and say, write me a connecting paragraph from bowling balls to Coca-Cola to, whatever I'm putting in there. And it'll give me back a version of that where I'm like, that's kind of what I'm thinking, but now do it this way. And eventually it'll help me pare down my thoughts, which is crazy because we all have those brain farts, right? Where I kind of know where I want to go with this, but I'm not quite sure. Use Chat GPT to extract the rest.
I used it for domain searches based on what Perry did at the live event. Also, I had 50 or 100 different domains that it generated, put them into the bulk registration tool, and it showed me what was available.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
like Mike said, this is a tool that even Go Mobile is going to be leaning in a lot deeper with Kevin. You'll be stay tuned. There's some really big things that we're working on there, but it's something that we're leaning in not only as a company to leverage, right, to create more efficiencies, to create more manpower without manpower, I guess bot power, and really wanting to make sure that you are all finding areas that you can leverage it in your business, because there's no shortage of people out there talking about prompting and talking about Chat GPT. It's all over, but really true ways that you could apply it in your business that makes sense, that you could actually leverage and level up in your business, whether it be content generation, whether it be how to really identify and build out your brand, or whether it be building images, or whether it be even helping Go Mobile set up the mobile app layouts and some of the design that could be created through Midjourney in advance. So yeah, really fascinating stuff. So thank you for that recommendation as well, Mike, because it's definitely the topic around town right now for sure.
Yep.
Hey, this has been an incredible session. I love branding. I always love branding. And when I look at Cyberdogz marketing, I get it. I can see that there's a lot that goes into the brand, even though it's simple, there's a lot that goes into that brand. You've done a great job. So have you done courses on branding? Have you taught students on branding? I mean, obviously you use all of this education in your company and your agency, but this is really good stuff.
I've done a lot of presentation stuff, but not formally, no. And that's kind of what I mentioned it earlier, but that's kind of why we're building out Cyberdogz University. Is we don't even know what it looks like yet, but there is a course model in development. We're kind of in the early stages. So,
well, and if you're watching this on YouTube and you enjoyed what you saw today, make sure to like this video and share it. Share it with folks in your world that might want to learn some branding and get this branding information out there, because it's good stuff. Also, subscribe to the page while you're on here. Definitely do that. Hit the notifications and we'll make sure to let you know when this episode or others drop, and hit the YouTube. So good to see you on here. Mike, thank you, man. I appreciate it. This has been fun. we're going to go ahead and close it down. But before we do that, I'd love to give you the mic if there's any final words that you'd like to share with your peers here.
Yeah, just I'd leave you with the challenge of just kind of being more aware of brand. Like, if you really pay attention when you're out and about doing your thing and living your life, if you really pay attention to not only the branding around you, but even how we fall victim to it ourselves, and you don't even realize it sometimes, it's fascinating, because not that quality doesn't matter. And I think quality gets you to a point where you maybe like certain green beans different than others at the grocery store. But if you know what you like, you know what brand you like, and it's baked into your brain. And going from a nostalgic mindset as well, think back to any music or jingles that might be in your head from an advertisement or a Saturday morning cartoon. All of that is branding. And if it burnt its way into your brain, it worked. Beautiful.
Very well said, sir. All right. Well, thank you very much. And now the community is going to give you a big sign off here. But before we do that, I just want to tell you all that to be thinking about where can you apply what you learned from the 10 steps, I think that Mike shared with us today. Where can you make some adjustments in your current brand? And if you haven't started building your brand yet, now's a great time to start and use ChatGPT to maybe help you with some inspiration and get you through the writer's block, right? But branding is important. And you heard Kevin say, it's really hard to make paid ads work with a company that lacks brand. And so keep that in mind as you're also working with your clients. All right. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much, Kevin. Appreciate all of you for joining us today. Please unmute and give Mike a big thank you. You want to hear from Mike again in the future? Let him know.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mike.
I loved it, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks,
Mike.
Mike.
We'll hear you again.
Thank
Excellent,
you.
Mike.
Appreciate
Great
it.
job. Super job.
Thank you very much, Mike. Great.
Woo!
Great.
Yeah, Mike.
Great.
Go
Mike
Cyberdogz.
got it. Cyberdogz.
Awesome. Great.
All right, everybody. Follow Mike. Follow Kevin. It's been an amazing session today. Go out and have a fantastic weekend. And you know what? We're back at this next week. We'll see you next week. Same bat hour, same bat channel. We've got another next week. We're going to learn some interesting things around SEO and where it is today with John Limbacher. So stay tuned, guys. Go mobile or go home.
Go mobile or go home.
Take care, everybody.